Briana Taylor's South Louisville apartment. How was Taylor connected? She wasn't the main suspect in the case, but she was named on the warrant. Detectives say in January of this year, they witnessed their main suspect, Jamarcus Glover, arrive at Taylor's apartment, go inside, and then come back out with a package. Police say Glover then got into his car and drove to the Muhammad Ali address, which the detective called a known drug house. The warrant goes on to say that a U.S. postal inspector verified that Glover had been receiving packages at Taylor's apartment, and that it is not uncommon for drug traffickers to receive mail packages at different locations to avoid detection from law enforcement. Detectives also wrote they believe Glover may be keeping narcotics or proceeds from the sale of narcotics inside Taylor's apartment for safekeeping. On the night of March 12th, Detective John Mattingly and several others were briefed on the plan. Mattingly says he drove by Taylor's apartment around 11:45 to scope it out, and then, around 12:30 on the morning of March 13th, officers parked in front of Briana Taylor's building and walked up to her door.
When SWAT was doing their thing down at 2-4 in Madison, we went over, or Elliott, whatever it was, we executed ours at the same time.
About 10 miles away, officers executed a warrant at a different property on Elliott Avenue. There, police found their main suspect, Glover, and arrested him. Around 12:40, officers began to bang on Taylor's door, setting into motion the events that eventually led to her death.
I'm laying in bed. It's a loud knock at the door.
The detectives say they knocked on the door multiple times.
I knocked on the door, banged on it. We didn't announce the first couple because our intent was not to hit the door. Our intent was to give her plenty of time to come to the door because they said she was probably there alone.
But Taylor wasn't there alone. According to her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, he and Taylor were in bed, watching a movie when they heard the knocks.
So it's a loud bang at the door. She pops up out of sleep. It scared her to death. Me too. Like, who is that?
Walker says they jumped out of bed, started getting dressed, and he grabbed his gun. At the same time, detectives took a battering ram against the door.
The door comes off the hinges. So I just let off one shot. I still can't see who it is or anything.
But Detective Mattingly says he saw them.
I'm face on about probably 20 feet away, right down the hallway. There's a bedroom door on the right, and there's the male and a female. The male's closest to the door, so he's to my right. And as I turn the doorway, he's in a stretched out position with his hands with a gun, and as soon as I clear, he fires. Boom.
Walker says shots started flying. He fell to the ground and dropped his gun. Mattingly was shot.
As soon as the shot hit, I could feel the heat in my leg. And so I just returned fire. I got 4 rounds off. And it was like simultaneous. It's boom, 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 boom.
The detective says he fired 2 more rounds and then told other officers he'd been shot. It was called over the radio at 12:43 a.m., according to a CAD report provided by the mayor. Detective Miles Cosgrove fired shots from inside the apartment. Brett Hankinson blindly fired 10 rounds from outside through a patio door, according to his termination letter.
They're just shooting, we're both on the ground, and then when all the shots stop, I'm panicking. She's right there on the ground, bleeding.
Records show 3 neighbors called 911 at 12:42, reporting shots near their apartment. 5 minutes later, after calling his mom, Walker dials 911.
911, Operator Harris, where is their emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door inside my girlfriend.
Okay, where are you located?
I'm at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4.
3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4?
Yes. Oh my God.
Okay, how old is your girlfriend?
She's 26. Breathe. Oh my
You said 26?
God.
Where was she shot at?
I don't know. She's on the ground right now. I don't know.
Meanwhile, officers rushed to the scene on word of an injured detective. Officers on scene put a tourniquet on Mattingly's leg as they wait for EMS.
At some point, EMS shows up. It seemed like forever. I don't know how long it took.
Mattingly was rushed to University Hospital where he went into surgery. According to the Taylor family attorneys, 120 LMPD officers went to the complex in the hours after the shooting, but no one went into the apartment to provide aid to Taylor until Walker was called out.
I'm still yelling help because she's over here like coughing and like I'm just freaking out. But I'm on the phone with her mom now at this point. So they keep yelling, come out. So I'm like, okay, it's the police.
Walker says police told him to drop his phone, so he does. And then he walks backwards to the officers.
I'm doing everything they're asking me to, slowly and surely. Like, I'm like scared to death.
Walker surrendered to police as SWAT moved into the apartment, finding an unresponsive Briana Taylor on the hallway floor. Walker was arrested at the scene and taken to LMPD headquarters, where he was interrogated for several hours, the interview wrapping up around 5:30 in the morning.
Like, I literally don't understand this at all.
Yeah.
I have no reason. Like, I don't understand at all why they would be knocking on her door unless it was a mistake. Like, at all. And I asked that out there a million times, like, why were y'all even at the door? Nobody had an answer.
That's what we're here to figure out, man.
Walker was charged with attempted murder of a police officer, a charge that was later dismissed. Later that day, LMPD briefed the media about the incident.
Victim of who died is, we're still working through what her involvement was on the narcotics investigation, and her identity will be released by the coroner's office at a later date.
As police briefed the media, the Public Integrity Unit searched through Taylor's apartment. Getting a warrant right after the shooting, they spent much of the day collecting evidence, including blood, hair, fingerprints, clothing, guns, and electronics. 2 days later, on Sunday, March 15th, we first learned the name of the victim, the Jefferson County coroner identifying her as 26-year-old Briana Taylor. And 5 months later, after facing national criticism, the city of Louisville reached a $12 million settlement with Briana Taylor's family. Then, in late September, the FOCUS team obtained her autopsy report, completed about 2 weeks after she died. Investigative reporter Paula Fasson explains what that report revealed about her injuries.
These 8 pages reveal new information about how Briana Taylor died. They explain she was hit by 5 gunshots, one of them piercing her lungs, another striking her main pulmonary artery, which medical experts say is almost always an instant death sentence.
The autopsy report from the Jefferson County Coroner's Office shows bullets pierced her abdomen, back, and foot. But among her most serious wounds, according to medical experts we consulted, a shot to a major blood vessel connecting to the heart, or main pulmonary artery.
How serious of a wound is that?
It's a devastating wound. I couldn't tell you what the survivability rate of a wound like that would be exactly, but from my experience seeing far too many people shot in that area over my lifetime, I can tell you it's tremendously low.
Medical experts we spoke with say less than 1% of people survive a shot to the main pulmonary artery. Confirmation about exactly how Taylor died has been limited. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron said Wednesday, citing an FBI report, that of the 3 officers who fired their weapons, it was Detective Miles Cosgrove who fired the bullet that killed her. But Cameron said he was following protocols, acting in self-defense after Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, shot at them. Walker believed they were intruders. In addition to the location of Taylor's wounds, the autopsy report also reveals she was wearing a necklace with a gray metal heart pendant when she died. We obtained these photos from her younger sister, who tells us this was that necklace.
Taylor's sister says that heart-shaped necklace she was wearing when she died was a keepsake from their grandmother, who passed away 3 years ago. She says it reflects the love Taylor always had for her family, and she hopes new details that come to light help bring her family closer to justice. For FOCUS, I'm Paula Fasson.
The grand jury in the Taylor case later indicted former LMPD officer Brett Hankinson on 3 counts of wanton endangerment. Those charges stemmed from bullets he fired into an apartment nearby Taylor's, where 2 people and a child were sleeping inside. Neither Hankinson, John Mattingly, or Miles Cosgrove, who all fired their weapons that night, were charged in connection to Taylor's death. 3 members of the grand jury have since spoken out against the court proceedings and the charges that were presented to them. Well, we know 2020 has been a long year, and we want to highlight some of the other stories our team has covered over the past 12 months. So we had our WHAS11 digital desk look at the top trending FOCUS stories for each month. To start off the year, our investigation into the use of spice, also known as synthetic marijuana, had your attention online. The city's homeless population has been impacted the most because the drug is cheap and easy to get. But the city says they don't track the use of spice, even though advocates for the homeless community say spice is keeping people from getting the help they really need. To read up on this story, head to WHAS11.com or visit our mobile app. And in February, our investigation revealed years of alleged abuse and neglect at Wildlife in Need. Weeks later, the state of Indiana filed a lawsuit to shut down the nonprofit for good. You followed this story closely. Later in the show, we'll have more on the investigation and an update on where that case stands right now. Coming up, a look back at 2020 as COVID swept through the Commonwealth. Our restaurants, schools, and businesses weren't the only places affected by the deadly virus. So were our state prisons. Paula Vasan has more. And later, we take a look at how the COVID pandemic affected families across the Commonwealth as unemployment skyrocketed over the first part of the year. Focus investigator John Charlton has an update on how our coverage made a big difference. In April, family members of inmates at Green River Correctional Complex said they feared for their loved ones as the COVID-19 virus continued to spread. Officials at the time said they hadn't taken action to protect both inmates and staff. Focus investigator Paula Vasan talked with medical professionals and families about their concerns.
It's very scary.
I'm terrified for the guys in there.
There's nothing we can do. We're just trying to help.
We interviewed 3 family members of 3 inmates at Green River Correctional Complex. They have the same fears.
These guys are in a death trap, so it's like they're kind of on death row.
Phoenix Shepard received this photo of her husband on April 9th. He's holding up a sign that says, "Please, Governor Beshear, don't let me die here."
They have like these hand sanitizer things now, but he said they're empty.
Kaylee Watson shared this photo of her boyfriend with a similar cry for help. And when she talked to him last week,
I hear in the background multiple men coughing around him. It was really sad.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear has confirmed 71 people from the prison have tested positive for COVID-19. Of those, 2 people have died. That's out of more than 900 inmates there.
Yes, it is a scary and a dangerous situation.
On Friday, Mary Noble with Kentucky's Justice and Public Safety Cabinet outlined safety measures in place. Among them, more frequent cleaning of the building. She said officers must wear gloves, get their temperatures taken, and have their shoes sanitized before their shifts. She said masks and hand sanitizer have also been distributed. All positive efforts, according to Lauren Brinkley Rubenstein, a professor at the University of North Carolina School of Medicine. But she says she still wants the full picture.
Kentucky is one of the very few states that has not been reporting statewide numbers.
One of 4 states, she says, not reporting the number of COVID-19 cases and deaths in state prisons.
It means there's a lack of transparency.
And unfortunately, the Department of Corrections has not been providing that full picture of the data.
Leaving this mother, wife, and girlfriend wondering if their loved ones will be part of an unknown statistic.
I'm very concerned that it's only going to take a staff member to pass away for them to actually go in there and do something about it.
Governor Beshear says he's committed to testing everyone at Green River Correctional Complex, and many I've interviewed call it a good first step. But they also want COVID-19 cases in state prisons to be public. I asked Kentucky's Department of Corrections when that might be. Their reply: expect that data on their website sometime this week. For Focus, I'm Paula Vasan.
What is your reaction to the impact of our coverage?
I think you guys were promptly on it in a timely manner, and that was promising. And I seen that you guys followed up on it several times, and I was tuned in all the time. First of all, I want to say I appreciate you for reaching out to get the word out, for more transparency in what's going on in our prison system. I feel like that you are allowing the story to be told in a different light than what we would probably normally hear. It means a lot. I really appreciate you, Ms. Paula. It really does mean a lot. Because I don't even know if the transparency would get out had you not reached out to me and wanted to know my daughter's story.
And we continue our look at the focus stories you've been viewing online over this year. This one is from March.
Ma'am, I'm not trying to waste your time. Then is it your intention to enter a guilty plea at this time or not?
No. Why am I wasting your time, man?
Retired Breckenridge County Sheriff Todd Pate faced 9 charges stemming from his second DUI in 2019 that injured another driver. Pate and Judge Janet Crocker got into a heated exchange over his plea in that case because he was reluctant to commit before the judge. In July, Pate took the plea deal and was sentenced to 75 days in jail with 29 days of good credit. And now let's take a look at April. A USDA judicial officer ruled that Wildlife in Need founder Tim Stark violated the Animal Welfare Act multiple times. His license was later revoked. Later in the show, we revisit my investigation, and I have an update on what's happened since then. Now, a look at May. John Charlton covered the Louisville Forum, which is a nonpartisan public issues group. At the forum, U of L economics professor Dr. Paul Coombs criticized the state for not pivoting when there was a surge in cases. He also called out the state over its slow reopening plan. If you want to read up on that story from May, you can find it at WHAS11.com or on our mobile site. And coming up, we take a further look into the COVID crisis in the Commonwealth and how the FOCUS team looked into the data to give you more than just the numbers. Plus, the biggest problem for many Kentuckians this year, unemployment payments or a lack thereof. John Charlton followed the state's unemployment issues every step of the way. We have more from him coming up. Since the first COVID-19 case was reported in Kentucky back in March, the FOCUS team has been on your side, breaking down the data that looks past the case count and the death rate. And behind those daily deep dive reports is our investigative producer, Andrea Ash. So, Ms. Andrea Ash, you're our investigative producer for FOCUS, but everyone now knows you as like the data wizard after all of your work on the data deep dives. How did you get started doing this?
Yeah, so who knew 9 months later we'd still be doing this and probably counting a little bit longer. So our news director at the very beginning of this was like, hey, we need to keep track of certain data points. And we had a little whiteboard in our newsroom, and every single day when we would get new data, we would erase it and change the whiteboard. And now 9 months later, we have an entire Excel sheet that's, you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And there's, just about every data point we've been keeping track of this whole time.
So you've never settled when a state health official or an elected official has ignored you or told you that they don't know. You've been so good about pushing for answers. Why has that been a priority for you?
Yeah, so we show you guys a couple graphs a day. And in that maybe 1 minute of showing you a couple graphs, there is hours and hours of behind the scenes work and emails. And that's been extremely important, again, because decisions are being made based on this data. And it's imperative that we hold these leaders accountable and we know how the data is affecting their decisions and have access to the same data that they have so that it's public.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for doing this from all of us on your team, but in the community, because this is huge and you're so right. This is going to benefit us for years to come. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And, we've had a lot of support along the way, and I hope that you guys keep being curious, keep asking questions, and we'll keep holding those in power accountable and, being a force for transparency.
Now let's take a look at more of those trending stories you followed online. This one is from June, when we reported when Wildlife in Need founder Tim Stark failed to file the proper paperwork to get a stay on his USDA license revocation while his appeal was pending. It would have allowed him to continue showing animals while fighting his case. He later lost that license permanently. And in the month of July, unemployment woes continued in the Commonwealth, causing some workers to be left without any money in the bank for months. John Charlton takes a look at that when we come back. And later, not only did the COVID pandemic impact how we live our daily lives and even our unemployment status, but what about the effect on the growing trend before the virus hit our shores? That's coming up later in our FOCUS special, a look back at 2020.
Nobody will answer. Their queue's always full.
Sat on hold for 2 hours and got disconnected.
Have we overpaid you? I said, no, you haven't given me a dime.
And I'm told repeatedly, there's no issue with the claim.
I've not seen a single dollar.
I always heard that if the government owes you, you'll never be broke. I'm broke.
You showed care and concern, but not only did you do that, but you were able to actually affect change for my family, and I truly appreciate that.
Literally a couple of days after you did that, magically my claim went through.
Whatever you guys have done, I hope you guys continue to do and help other people out.
If you all didn't stay on top of them and you all didn't fight for me and help me, I would still be sitting on hold for the helpline.
Welcome back to our Focus special, a look back at 2020. I'm Shay McAllister. Thanks for joining us. As you just heard, those were just some of the people who were impacted by the unemployment issues earlier this year. Not long after the first COVID case was reported in Kentucky on March 6, Governor Andy Beshear declared a state of emergency. Following that decision, he announced a series of restrictions on local businesses and restaurants, hoping to slow the spread of the virus. In that same move, Beshear also announced changes to the state's unemployment program, waiving the 7-day waiting period and the requirement for workers to actively seek employment. But businesses across the state started to feel the cash crunch and had to lay off workers. That led to thousands of people rushing to the unemployment office or attempting to file online, and that started to weigh down the system, causing multiple issues, including a security breach we told you about in July. Thousands of people were waiting for payment from the state, while unemployment office workers struggled to process all of the applications they were receiving. The state would later bring in global accounting giant Ernst & Young to try to help out with the situation. But still, thousands were left without money, as John Charlton found out.
By the end of the month, the federal $600 weekly supplement for unemployment will stop. It's a concerning cutoff for those who are owed it, and especially for those who haven't seen a dime.
It'll come. I have faith.
Crossing his fingers because Dan Kellogg is owed a ton of money.
You know, we're not talking a couple $100 here. That's $8,000.
Kellogg says that spans over the 7 to 8 weeks Ford furloughed him. The 33-year-old survived the loss of income, but he expects state unemployment will pay him what he's owed. Do you feel you'll ever see that money?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna make sure I see that money.
While Kellogg wants to be paid back, Tyler Osee
it's baffling, really.
Needs his back pay.
It's over $5,000.
That's for the 7 weeks and 3 days he had to wait to get his claim cleared. The 29-year-old father of 2 is now getting bi-weekly payments, but like so many others, still nothing for all that time he waited.
My car got repossessed 2 weeks ago.
If you got your back pay, do you think you would have been able to keep your car?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I could go get it right now.
Time is of the essence, though, especially since time is running out on the federal PUA payments.
If they don't get these claims settled by August 1st, will they still be eligible for that $600?
Yes. Confirmation at Wednesday's State Senate Appropriations and Revenue Committee. State unemployment representatives also told legislators help will come faster now that the state brought in Ernst & Young for nearly $7.6 million.
It sounds like a step in the right direction, but then it also sounds like they're spending a lot of money to fix a problem where people aren't getting their money.
Worth it, Tyler Osee would say, if he gets his back pay.
It's a huge deal. It's the money that I need to get everything back on track.
So how much does Kentucky owe in back pay, and to how many people? Well, after repeated attempts to find out, the state still hasn't gotten back to us on that. For Focus, I'm John Charlton.
A tiny bit left, huh? It's a nice feeling. So we're really positive right now.
All right, you can spread these files out down here. You got.
When I interviewed you the first time, you could tell that you were pretty depressed and desperate, and you're a totally different man right now.
Right. It was a good feeling, a really good feeling, when I finally did get the money. It made a big difference.
So when you got this money, it was life-changing for you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Once I got that back, it was like, it was almost like they gave me a key to a door I was waiting to open. I got a job again, a lot better, but I'm still trying to make up ground for everything that was pre-pandemic. It definitely shouldn't have taken this long. It definitely shouldn't still be going on.
Well, we're in the 70,000 range, so.
That still haven't got payments? Wow. That's insane. They still, to this day, I've never talked to anyone there. You guys were actually the only ones that talked directly to me. I was really shocked when I saw what you were doing and got the help from you. I did. What you're doing is really important, and it's really commendable that you're willing to do that. It's also nice to see somebody doing the things that you're doing, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that you've helped out in by any means. It kind of restored my faith in humanity a little bit.
As far as you and your family going into the new year, how are you feeling about that?
Good, really good. Everybody's a lot happier.
And that wasn't the only unemployment story that had your attention. Our digital desk looked at the numbers and found that in August, the top viewed focus story for the month was our report on a Kentucky substitute teacher having to pay the state back for collecting unemployment. Zach Fisher, a JCPS substitute, told us he received a bill from the state saying he was overpaid in benefits. Fisher requested payments after school let out for the summer. Another teacher, Candy Kane, also said she received a letter from the state and that she needed to pay the state back. Both filed an appeal, but it didn't get them the relief they were looking for.
10, 15-minute phone call, and that was it. I said it would be a hardship to pay back, and I've probably applied for 75 jobs this summer.
How did you notify us? An airplane in the sky, the ball was dropped, and it was dropped really bad, really hard.
Both Kane and Fisher told us the billing statement from unemployment was the only notification they've received. Once Focus reached out, the Kentucky Labor Cabinet directed WHAS11 with a link saying substitute teachers were ineligible for unemployment benefits during a regularly scheduled school break. And trending in September, another Focus unemployment update. It was in August that Governor Beshear announced unemployed workers would receive an additional $400 in benefits. But by September, there were still workers waiting for the extra help. At the time, Focus asked the state about how many payments had gone out. They told us that first week in August, over 108,000 payments were distributed, and in the second week, roughly the same amount had gone out. You can read more at WHAS11.com right now. Still ahead, it's a warning that hasn't gone away, the increased use of e-cigarettes. Paula Vasan takes a look at the trends and how the pandemic is impacting vaping among teens. That's next. For years, health officials have been warning us about the increased use of e-cigarettes and the dangers of the addiction. For the last year, Focus reporter Paula Vasan has been investigating those trends. Now, she's digging into how the pandemic is impacting vaping among our kids.
Back in February, we brought you into Bullitt East High School to show you how vaping was impacting their students.
Are you addicted?
Yes.
Their staff.
It is increased by 2- and 3-fold.
And their curriculum.
Is it impacting education?
Absolutely.
But COVID-19 has changed that. In an email, a school official tells me, our violations of course have gone drastically down during remote learning. In August this year, of about 13,150 students at Bullitt County Public Schools, there were 3 tobacco violations. During the same month last year, before COVID-19, there were 62 violations. Dozens of vaping products were confiscated. Around the country, vaping numbers have gone down too. A recent national survey shows 1.8 million fewer kids in the U.S. are using e-cigarettes compared to last year. Ben Chandler, CEO of the nonprofit Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, is hopeful more and more kids quit their addiction.
While I don't feel very good about the pandemic at all, that is one of the silver linings to the pandemic.
With kids working remotely, do you think the problem is just more concealed now?
It's possible, certainly, that it is going underreported and that we're not finding out about it and that it's hidden more.
Vaping products don't smell like burning tobacco. Many of them smell like fruit and candy.
And consequently, we do know that parents have a much harder time telling when their kids are vaping.
But he says his hunch is that underage vaping among kids is down, partly because there's less opportunity. In January, the legal age to purchase tobacco products, including electronic cigarettes, changed from 18 to 21 in Kentucky.
And they cannot legally get their hands on the products, so they rely on friends to get the products, and they're not seeing those friends, I would not imagine, in this pandemic.
We still don't know the full impact of COVID-19 on underage vaping. There's simply not enough data yet. The Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky says they'll be surveying youth on the topic within the coming months. For Focus, I'm Paula Vasan.
What's your reaction to our vaping coverage over the past year?
You guys have just done a great job. I've been dealing with this vaping issue for several years now, and that's, I would say without question, the most comprehensive, most compelling piece that I've seen on the subject.
Thank you so much.
It's true. It's compelling. It's direct. It does go in depth. You don't see that very much on television, and it's meaningful. I think it's tremendously impactful. And I do think that we've seen impacts as a result of it. But quite frankly, I've not seen the case put any better than it's been put by the work there at WHAS. This is why we need media, and good media in this country, is to bring focus on these kinds of issues. This has been an incredible problem. It's popped up so very quickly, and it's been overwhelming. You show how addictive the product is. You show how it's affecting young people in a very negative way. And it's just a good job. Well done.
It's an investigation we started in 2019 after learning about allegations of abuse and neglect at a local wildlife refuge. We have a full breakdown of what unfolded over the course of the year next. Welcome back. For the last hour, we've been sharing with you our most impactful investigations from 2020. We had our digital team crunch the numbers, and our biggest story of the year was the fallout at self-proclaimed animal refuge in southern Indiana, Wildlife in Need. For more than a year, we investigated claims against Wildlife in Need and its founder, Tim Stark, including going through more than 500 pages of local, state, and federal records. After publishing our findings, federal authorities revoked the facility's license and fined Stark more than $300,000. The Indiana Attorney General also filed a lawsuit aimed at shutting down the nonprofit for good. We want to warn you, some of the images in this story you're about to see are very graphic.
Big circle, big circle.
30 people file into the room.
Welcome to Wildlife in Need, everybody.
They've each paid $25 to be here to watch Wildlife in Need owner Tim Stark introduce some of his exotic animals.
Are y'all ready to get your animals today?
The access is unmatched. Animals up close and personal. But we didn't just go to see the show. We went looking for something else. Something former staffers say is easy to miss when you're inside this room.
They're missing how many animals are crying behind closed doors. They're not seeing the moldy food or no food at all. They're not seeing the lack of water. They're not seeing open wounds that aren't being treated.
Jordan Jones used to volunteer at Wildlife in Need. So did Kyra, Carly, Lauren, and 3 others who didn't want to be named, but did want to tell their story.
And if they're dying anyway, what's there to be afraid of by trying to stand up for them?
Founded in 1999, the facility is registered as a nonprofit, dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating indigenous wildlife.
It is not what it claims to be. It is not a rescue. It does not rehabilitate. It does not release. Animals that go there, they suffer a very terrible life.
You don't realize the red flags that you're seeing then. But now looking back, there were so many.
Nearly 500 pages from this USDA case file detail complaints, incidents, failed inspections, and more. It took us 9 months to get our hands on the documents. Records show allegations of neglect go back at least 10 years.
He's been operating since 1999. This has always been something that has been swept under the rug. It's the norm.
According to USDA records, the facility housed 43 animals in 2012 and nearly 300 only 6 years later. Former staffers tell us the numbers are even higher than that now, but the amount of help has never been enough. Inspectors have cited the facility at least twice for insufficient staff, resulting in a lapse of animal care.
They didn't have knowledgeable people there. And I don't think they had enough people there, even with all the volunteers.
Systematic breakdown seemingly started 7 years ago, when several animals died, according to USDA records. A serval, ocelot, and coatimundi died without explanation.
I've never, in the 2 years I was there, never saw a vet.
In March of 2017, tiger cubs declawed, later ruled a violation of the Animal Welfare Act. But not before the paws got infected, swelling with pus.
It was awful. I walked in and I immediately wanted to throw up.
Former staff we spoke to said Wildlife in Need owners refused to bring in an expert to administer care.
And I could not believe that an animal that needed medical attention, medical care, and medication, he was refusing to give. Kaiki died within a week.
Facility owners were cited for lying about their vet. Inspectors uncovering the vet they listed for the facility did not agree to provide care for all animals at the facility. Later that year, another suspicious death. Inspectors noting the owner described euthanizing a snow leopard by hitting it with a baseball bat.
Instead of waiting for the vet to get there, he said a proper form of euthanasia was blunt trauma to the head repeatedly.
More than just a lack of proper medical attention, former staff describe a lack of everyday necessities. Inspection reports detail enclosures without water, feeding animals expired meat and roadkill, a food storage room with an excessive accumulation of rodent feces on the floor, and again, lack of enrichment.
We were taught to call their cages enclosures, but they are cages. They're not habitats. They're not the plants. They're not the environment that animal is supposed to be in.
Former staff gave us these pictures showing a reptile living in a plastic toolbox.
Clark County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
3320 Jack People Road.
This animal and others housed in the reptile barn.
3320 Jack People Road?
Yeah, barn's on fire.
Your barn is on fire?
Yeah.
And then I remember I received a text message saying, "Oh, sorry, Jordan, guess you don't get to work with the reptiles now," because they all died. And I was actually made fun of by Tim and another staff member because I got upset because he died, and they like made a joke out of it.
At least 40 animals died in that 2016 fire. Fire inspectors investigated but never released a cause.
The fire was portrayed as a tragedy, an accident. But from some of the things I've seen there, I think that was also just neglect, just being in over your head.
The staffers call what's happening here hoarding and say it's led to animal neglect, animal escapes, and people have gotten hurt.
Clark County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
I need an ambulance, please.
June 2019, it was one of their own.
Okay, what's going on there?
An animal bite.
Okay, what kind of animal bite?
Hyena. I'm going down there now. He said he's wounded.
Graphic pictures from the scene showed the damage. The hyena latching on to the man's arm, ripping it open. According to the incident report, he was trying to get the escaped animal back into a cage. One man claims responsibility for everything that's happened on this property. That man is Tim Stark. And a 30-minute drive from Louisville puts us on his property, where he agrees to an interview.
I mean, it's kind of funny how they'll sit there and say, oh, well, look at this, it wasn't clean. Oh, look at that, it wasn't done. Oh, whose freaking job was it? Theirs. It was their job to clean that same exact cage that they wanted to take a picture of that wasn't clean. It was their responsibility. That reflects back on me? I don't think so.
We know you have questions about what happens next. What happens to those animals? And we have the same questions. What we can tell you is Tim Stark has 35 days to appeal the decision. Until that deadline, he can continue operating as usual. We talked to him today, and he told us he plans to do just that. For Focus, I'm Shay McAllister. Tim Stark was the top focus story you were looking at online in October. Police arrested Stark in upstate New York after he took off from Charlestown on September 16th. That same day, an Indianapolis judge found him in contempt of court and issued a warrant for his arrest. He's accused of removing more than 24 animals from his exotic animal facility before officials could take them. And he's facing a felony charge after police say he threatened and grabbed a public official during an inspection at Wildlife in Need back in March. Stark is currently facing 2 legal battles, one here in Clark County and another in Indianapolis. He was supposed to go to trial in December to wrap up the case in Indianapolis, but he told the judge he'd been diagnosed with COVID and he needed more time to prepare. That trial date was moved to February. When we expect the state to make a case that everything on the Wildlife in Need property belongs to Wildlife in Need, and now that Wildlife in Need is officially dissolved, those assets would be liquidated if the judge rules on the side of the state. How unusual has this entire year of proceedings been with these contempt of court charges, with people being put in jail, brought into court in handcuffs when we're talking about a lawsuit against a nonprofit?
You're supposed to comply with the rules. You're supposed to respond to discovery. You're supposed to identify the animals. You're supposed to do a lot of things. That hasn't been done here. So it's been a very unusual road, and you're dealing with a character, and a character who doesn't feel like he needs to subject himself to the authority of the court, and has indicated that to the court on numerous times.
Stark has argued everything on that property belongs to him, not the nonprofit. That case again goes before the judge in February, and 1 month later, he'll be facing charges in a Clark County courtroom.
And so this is a matter that is serious, and I intend to prosecute it in a serious manner because of what's alleged to have occurred.
Stark is facing felony intimidation charges and misdemeanor battery in connection to an incident from March when investigators say he grabbed a public official during an inspection on his property. Before we leave you tonight, we'd like to give a special thanks to our digital team here at WHAS11 for compiling all of the Focus digital data for this special. Again, thanks for watching our Focus special, a look back at 2020. Tonight, we'd like to leave you with a special message from myself and our team as we continue to tell the stories that are most important to you.
What is focus? By definition,
It's the center of interest or activity and a point of concentration.
Our team has an interest in finding the stories that matter to you.
and we are actively searching to tell the ones that need to be told.
It's more than just about being curious.
It's about concentrating on a story.
And getting you results.
Our work is about quality. Are you addicted?
Yes.
Integrity.
Those animals deserve so much better.
And closure.
It's the money that I need to get everything back on track.
We are focused on Kentucky.
We're focused on Southern Indiana.
We are focused on you.